podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. You are listening to Good Brothers. Let's get into the show. Peace. We are here again. What's good, the Majestic?
Peace, my brother. How are you, man? All things are well, all things considered, man.
Man, I'm up. What do you say? I'm alive on arrival or whatever. I'm good. So two things we was going to jump in this week. I mean, we'll start with the one was RNC. The Republican National Convention was on this week. I'm gonna keep it 100 for the listeners. I watched the highlights. Read the feedback. I did not tune in, to the stream, so to speak. I guess I should say I didn't actually get to watch much of the Democratic convention either.
Right.
But just for the fair and balanced crowd out there and shit. If they worried about what
you did.
Right. Anyway, so I had some thoughts, and I wanted to hear some of your perspectives, or something that jumped out for you, or not so much in the content, but just what's your first thought that's thinking about that happening this week?
So I think the conversation about the RNC, and I think as one thing we just was building about quickly before we got started was this idea of like the history of TV, right? So kind of start meta here. The history of TV, there was one point where you just had to watch what was on TV, right? There was 3 channels, and then 4 and 5, depending on your independent channels, right? And you just watched what was on TV. And if you agreed, if you didn't agree, if you liked Archie Bunker, if you didn't like Archie Bunker, it didn't matter, right? Because that was on TV. And so with the advent of, 1, cable, and then 2, the segmented populations of TV, meaning once it became clear that you could watch this to hear this perspective and this to hear this perspective, then what started to happen was people would just say, well, I want to go listen to this over here. I don't want to hear what you have to say over here, right? So then now you have 1,000 channels, most of which you don't watch ever, right? Which is the, highway robbery / beauty of cable television.
Listen, man. Listen, I used to work there, baby. It's a cold pitch when you hit them with it. Like, look, you have access to thousands of hours of all the time. Anytime you get up and turn that on, you got all them channels. They right there. That's why it costs $200 some a month.
It's nothing on there. But we'll say Comcast or one of them might want to check in at some point. So
right, we're gonna go soft.
Give a little space
to breathe.
Yeah, a little space and grace until they have another conversation. But so when you get into this, like, okay, I watch Fox News, I watch MSNBC, or I watch this channel, I watch that channel. And so we become so segmented that you only watch what you want to see, right? And I think it was actually the precursor to social media in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Like it gave you your algorithm, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've created your own set of truth. You've created your own set of reality. So I say that to say when we think about the RNC, and to some extent the DNC too, but definitely the RNC, they have just created their own reality. It's like COVID is not really a problem anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like we're ravaging the streets. Everybody's getting paid, and Donald Trump made it okay. And so on one level, I think a lot of us who are used to reading certain magazines and reading certain things and are in our own algorithm forget that there's millions of people who have bought into this truth. And I say that to say that if anyone thinks it's going to be like if Biden's going to coast to winning, you have another thing coming.
Oh yeah.
Because there's millions of people who got a week of believing what they want to believe. And that's what they think now. And so if they watch that and believe any of that, anything you say to them is probably like in one ear right out the other. You see what I'm saying? And so with that segmented kind of vibe, it was really clear. Another thing I'm going to say about it was interesting. And this is a broader part of why I say Donald Trump is the last white man, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just flouted every element of the Hatch Act, every element of the idea of the separation of running for office and being in office that you ever have. Like, essentially, he said, I'm going to use the fact that I'm president to run again for presidency. Right? But everyone just, I mean, rather you just like you can't use the White House to run again. He had a party with no masks at the White House. Told you kiss my ass, man.
It's a wild thing, right? Because, you know, I mean, and I'm a pivot in, pivot out in a sense, but, you know, like in terms of, you know, and I say this with love to my conservative brothers. You know, I've been watching y'all since the 80s, you know what I mean? Once I started paying attention to the universe, the world, so to speak. And, you know, and the consistent dynamic is this sort of like, especially as my understanding of myself and the world, you know, matured, you know, to where you really know what you're talking about civic wise. Like, you have a political perspective that advocates a sort of like, this is basically, once I see it this way, that's the way it is. And I will project out on you all the stuff I am insecure about. Right. So you have this president like, oh, well, you know, I mean, you wouldn't run afoul of the Hatch Act, you know, because you love the Constitution. It's like, I mean, I love the Constitution, but I want to win, dog.
Right.
So I'm gonna have a party. I'm gonna put the White House in my goddamn. Well, COVID, I had to stay at the crib. I couldn't, you know. It's like, man, you're the president. You could go anywhere and clear that joint out and do your, you know, do whatever you need to do in terms of a, you know, a streaming event. Like, it's the thing that, especially when you really study U.S. history and U.S. like kind of history of like the way people operate in terms of like political leadership, you know, often it's a choice of the person if they're really going to try to adhere to some of the like unwritten rules, so to speak, and some very written rules about like keeping sort of the integrity of the concepts together. And it's up to if people are going to decide to punish them for breaking those rules. And, you know, our history has shown that people, especially, our white folks, will be in terms of, you know, the historical reality of that, they will be real into the rules as long as the rules are the rules they're comfortable with. You know what I'm saying? So, like, i.e. lynching. I.e., you know, not paying people what they're supposed to pay them because you don't want to pay, you know, recently freed people.
Right.
You know, like these are historical examples of, like, you could have just did the right thing in, like, you know, 120 years ago and 130 years ago, and we would largely probably be in a whole different place. But
right.
that wasn't on the menu for you. So it was like, nah, we want to do this other thing, and if nobody will, if no one will enforce the law. Right. And if we, you know, which to me, I always think of, you know, enforcement of something is, you know, there's a place for, you know, the power and will to make somebody else do something else. Right. Mm-hmm. There's also a thing of like, what do you hold yourself accountable to? And if you know that ain't cool, then you do it anyway. It's like, all right, well, here we are. Right. And your man's, his whole, and I mean, if I had the time to write it down before this all started, I'm like, he's going to break all of the rules. You know why? Because he's about him.
Right.
And about his win. Like, he don't care about, like, why is that a rule? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like the dude, like, when you ever see somebody, like, get in trouble in high school, to be like, well, why can't I wear, you know, pants, you know, with my ass cheeks out? You know what I'm saying? Right. This is what I'm into. Like, it's like, well, I mean, it's not officially, I'm not breaking the rule, but they're long enough. Just got my ass cheeks out. You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, well, yeah, you're right. You got us there. 16-year-old, you stumped me. You know what I'm saying? You stumped me for 10 minutes, but your ass is going home.
Right.
You get suspended. I don't know if it's legal, but you out of here. You know what I'm saying? And so that like is like, okay, I mean, all right, this is what we're doing. I guess this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you just gotta, the world is to be made, so to speak. Like,
it's like this win, 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 win. Like what J. Rock said, fuck everything else. Win, 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 win. You see what I'm saying? And we take it like, okay, it's a joke, but no, it's not a joke. Like for them, power for a certain set of people, the idea of being powerful is more important than being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think we downplay what that means in American political economy. There's a group of people who would rather be powerful than right. And then some people would argue there's a group of people, i.e. Democrats, who would rather be right than powerful. Right. And so because of that, you have this really interesting space. Now, to be true, obviously, you have some Republicans who are very, focused on maintaining whatever rules they've come to believe were right. Right. Yeah. And on the flip side, you have some Democrats who say, and I actually agree from a political perspective, win first, then everything else makes sense. Because you can't legislate if you don't win.
Yeah.
So it's
that's
cool,
where Oh no, that's where it's like when you get into the weeds and the details, it's like it's a spectrum. Like there's some people that are definitely like, look, man, whatever's whatever, and then there's people that's like, and it's where I think about like the involvement in the kind of political process becomes important, because you realize when you be in the room, it's like, oh, that won the day because it wasn't enough people running like with the other idea present at the place where folks convened and made the decision.
Right.
I mean, it's not just this like. So, you'll have people who really like, no, I have a deep-seated idea. And it might be, rooted in my spiritual tradition, or it might be rooted in, whatever my particular construction of values. And then it's like, oh, so I gotta, like, I'm in a spot that in order to get the thing I need, I gotta like make this decision also while you're like, maybe saying real shot out off the wall stuff, right? But I need your help on this land use piece.
Right.
Because you the only one to hold my land use, politics, right? So the other party don't hold them, and so I guess I gotta dance with the one I came with, you know what I'm saying, and roll with you, you know what I'm saying? Because the risk on the other side, it's a lot of risk if I switch sides or I leave your side, so to speak.
Right. So I think it makes an interesting space of like, now you see that a group of people who 4 years ago were like, we would never rock with this guy, or like, yeah, we're rocking with this guy. Because essentially for them, it's better to rock with someone they find truly reprehensible, but get 6 out of 10 things done, than not be able to get their things done at all.
Yeah.
And again, that's a political economy conversation, right? Like you can choose however you feel about that conversation. One thing's for sure, though, they have traded in being right for being in power.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? They have decided, like, man, we are going to try to hold on to this, and we're going to see if how this train go. And the RNC was definitely, I mean, Pompeo, the Secretary of State being in Jerusalem, and then acting like that America didn't pay for him to get to Jerusalem. It's like he just happened to be in Israel. He happened to be in Israel. Like,
yeah, I just was, had some.
When the rest of us can't go nowhere, you're in Israel. The rest of us can't leave, can't go to Canada. The rest of us can't go to Mexico. And you happen to be there on your own money?
Right.
And you don't think that you were signaling to conservative Jews and signaling to conservative Christians about the end of the world, right? Like, I mean, one thing about them too, they use deep, like, messaging. Right? That again, you would have to be watching the stuff they're into to know what message they're sending.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you don't know what message they're sending, then you don't know. I mean, the Democratic one was generally, we got to get this guy out of here. The RNC was essentially like, if you don't keep me, they'll destroy this country. So they both were ones of fear. Right? Like, let's not make any mistake. The DNC and the RNC were generally both based in fear. One was based in the fear of a person, and the other is based in the fear of a party. / black folks / protesters, white hippie protesters. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you allow them to win, all your cities are going to be messed up. And you know what I mean? So it's an interesting thing of whose fear factor is more impactful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is also horrible to I mean, obviously fear has been used as a tactic in politics since the days of lore, right? But that's where we're at now. We're at like, okay, is this about keeping people in fear? And what do you fear more? Do you fear America going the way of what you think is a third world country, or do you fear this guy literally creating a space of killing, of having thousands of people die? You know, so
yeah, and it's. I mean, unfortunately, going to fear. I mean, fear to me has been a central theme. I mean, it's probably a central theme, back, deep in the roots of American, sort of political.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What's the there's a word for it that I can't find right now, but political culture. Like, oh well, stay away, look out for that. Oh man, it's coming. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? The boogeyman.
Yeah.
Like, and we just assume, this other rationality. I listened to a couple things I've been in the last 2 weeks, like reading and listening to. There's the serial drawn on Good White Parents. You know what I mean, about public schools.
Yeah, how is that
in New York? It's pretty good. I thought it was I mean, I think it's only 5 episodes. I don't know if there's more, but because it goes the arc of the one school in Brooklyn, but also talks about the I'm mad now that I gotta go listen to the first, because the big protests where all the like black parents and black and brown parents kept their kids home.
Ocean Hill.
No, in the like 63. It's like the day of. Dang it. There's a name for it, but it's like a protest I never really heard of. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew black and brown parents, but like hundreds of thousands of kids didn't go to school because black and brown parents were like, "Yo, these schools are not fair. Like our schools is messed up. Fix the schools." School district, and so it goes like from that arc, and that like when this school that she's centered on, or they are, I don't know. She wasn't alone. The presenter, or the host rather. In that you had these parents who advocated basically the school was going to be built right by the projects where a lot of the kids that was going to go there was going to live, and these others advocated to move it closer to sort of the white families, or in the middle, kind of where the dividing line would be, because we want to send our kids to an integrated school, and then all these parents never sent their kids to that school. By the time the school was built, right? But it gets into this thing of like, well, someone was like, well, it was an experiment. We weren't sure how it was going to go. Like, I don't want to put my kids in that spot, right? Like, fear of like what could happen, right? And it's a very human thing. So it's not. I'm not like putting these folks when we speak of this, or even saying it's whatever your political philosophy in America. There's something that you gotta like. You navigate away from, interfere from a fear perspective. You know what I'm saying? It's very few people who operate and make decisions politically completely without some like fear, maybe not so much in practice, but at least in your thought process, you go, wait a minute, man, what am I, what if I move over there? What am I exposing my kids to? Or what if I do this? What does happen? Or if we don't let this happen, right? Like, what's going to happen? Like, where will this end? Or where's it going to go? Like, these are, fully normal human things that happen, but it's also a choice to build a full platform on all of, like, basically every fearful coded language thing about black and brown people I've known from a child to today, and put that into your political platform, right? And go like, yes, if they're going to take the suburbs away, as if the suburbs are a spaceship that exists next to cities and can move. It's like what are y'all talking about, man? It's just a neighborhood. Like yes, it is a suburb, but it's not this place that somehow can exist on its own without the rest of the network of communities and spaces and industrial and corporate, land, working, like. Right, you're still on Earth, man. Like, what are y'all talking about?
Or even the AFFH, but it exists. Like, even that particular rule, like, yo, AFFH wasn't going to make that kind of huge shift. Like, some of my fair housing friends probably be more angry than they already are. But like that wasn't going to like fundamentally shift the world. It just was making sure that the government did not allow you to maintain segregated neighborhoods, which, by the way, we should have been doing that since Mitt Romney's dad was in 68, 69 with Nixon, right? Like he talked about this stuff in 1970.
Right, so, right. And he was
really,
and
he
had it down.
And Nixon got rid of his dad, Romney's dad, right? So this is not new stuff. This is just saying, really, we're going to be more purposeful around doing the stuff that we already said we're going to do. And so how he turns that into, we're going to keep poor people out the suburbs, when you and I both know there are poor people in suburbs all across the country, right? Like, that's more of a market thing. You're not going to be able to do that forever. Even with the best of your intentions, there are poor people who are going to live in suburbs because there's flight, right? Like, you can't stop that. But to your point, to create that kind of idea and your whole premise being based upon that fear is another kind of level.
Yeah. Well, and it's the thing of if you keep saying something's the truth, people start thinking, I guess that's true. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole idea with messaging. Is like you keep saying it. Like, well, you got to watch out. It's like even the idea, when people talk about crime and safety, I'm really concerned about violent crime. And I'm like, when's the last time you've been a victim of violent crime? Even property crime. Like somebody stole your lawnmower, they steal your front deck chairs. Like they keep it a buck with me. Right. Well, because it could happen. I'm like, yeah, it could, but when did it happen? Right. It's like it's not a rational. It's not a conversation based on some like experiential thing where you're like, yo, I bought a grill. 24 hours later, somebody stole the grill off my porch, so I got another grill and chained it to the porch. Somebody cut the lock. You know what I'm saying? Like where you have, if you've ever experienced that, i.e. myself, you know what I'm saying? Or if you had a bike stolen as a kid, oh man, you know what I'm saying? And you like, you just learn like, man, if I left that bike out, man, that like belonged to the streets. As that they say in modern parlance, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, you put that out front, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a surreal thing that sometimes sit and talk with someone who's like really worried about this thing that they may never have experienced, but they've ingested this. Like, I need to be worried about the crime rates. You know what I'm saying? I'm always like, I thought about it. I'm going to go look because I don't know if people understand. People don't understand statistics or how they work for the most part. I'm like, I don't think crime rate means what you think it means. Pretty sure, like. What you're thinking that like implies about your situation, like if you look for houses, they'll always have, they'll like, like crime, like, say, it's low or it's this or it's that, and I wonder, you got to ask the question when you peel back the layers and stuff like, well, what is that based on, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that based on, some actual measurable thing, or is that based on, after the fact, or is it largely based on we think it's dangerous over there, so, look out, you know what I mean? And or
did you parse it out? Did you parse out what crimes take place? Like, okay, to your point, are people getting their bike stolen, or are people getting, or are people being killed? Right? And is it your zip code or your block? Right? Like, you know what I mean? Because, is it your zip code? Is it your census tract? Like, where is it that it's happening around you? But again, because of the politics and the kind of segmenting of Americans, like, politics is like, all right, well, the job is to make people think about this happening. Like, if it happened a block away from them, it's happening to them. But if it happened a neighborhood away, is it happening to you, or you just would you just rather live in a homogeneous neighborhood? Right, which is really the translation. Yeah, I really would rather live in a homogeneous neighborhood. Right. So yeah, man. And I guess final thing I'll say about the idea of the RNC and just kind of what's happening is that historically it's amazing that in less than 4 years a party has come to be controlled by a person that was not a Republican before. Like, say what you will about how politics and third way and centrist politics have dipped into the Democratic Party, which a lot of it is definitely holds some weight. That ideas that were traditionally considered Republican, like tax credits, right? That was a Republican idea, right? That now is a democratically held value. Everyone wants tax credits. Well, before that wasn't something that was a Jack Kemp special, right?
Right.
And now, we all wait for tax credit programs to build affordable housing. So while that is the case, the fact that you have somebody who was nominally and not a Republican and, just in no way control a party in 4 years from a historical context will be amazing to read about.
Yeah.
Like, I think we can't understand it now because we're watching it, but like later we'll be like, wait, so one dude took over a party and bent it to his will in 4 years? I don't care what you say. No Democratic person has bent a party to their will in 4 years. There will always be people that's like, not messing with you, right? I'm reading Pelosi's book, and she talks about how like her and Clinton never was cool. They're going back to the 80s.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like the fact that one guy could do that in a party is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point to pivot out of that. Or just, and I would want to point out too, like to me, it shows, and this was something I was thinking of earlier on in our conversation. Is like the idea that these political entities are just set in stone. Like I said, if you follow a whole thread of thinking where you're like, oh, well, the parties are just they're both the same and and they exist supernatural to the humans that are involved in them. Right. And therefore you go, well, it's immutable. Like you can't change it. It has too much inertia. And it's like, well, the party leans to the leadership, and then who's the most prominent public figure.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Now, I may not totally, Democratic Party didn't go full Obama. They leaned into Obama's, perspective eventually, even though they, but not like this.
No.
Not like this. Yeah, I mean, and I think to me, it's an indicator and a reminder that I say to people like, to get in the mix. Like now, if you that there is actually the ability for outcomes based on your engagement with something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you get in the mix with, whatever, whether it's a new party, you know what I'm saying? You want to do a third party, that's cool. You know what I mean? But understand part of the third party is you got to really get out here and get a constituency.
Right.
Like it can't just be y'all, we got these great, ideas. And so we're this group of people with these ideas. Like, no, then you have to go get a constituency that buys in and sees a benefit of advocating those ideas in their lives. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's a lot of work. That ain't just, I'm going to say something smart one day and everybody's, well, that's a smart idea. It's like, no, also you got to say something smart. And, well, do you control the street lights over here?
Right.
Could y'all help us get this, this giant hole filled? Can y'all help us with this train track bridge? Can y'all help us with these bad schools? Like, there has to be a point where something actually gets done based on the organizing that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, I worry that folks, too many people, and at different times of my own life, myself included, you look at these entities as these things that just exist and that they're not actually filled with people making decisions and then acting on those decisions. And like, so like, in 4 years, Bull could turn like, basically Bull could turn that party away from a dude like McCain, who in all senses would be the poster child for their reality. You know what I'm saying? Veteran, staunch value system, sort of like, consistent, sometimes, rational, right?
Right.
That's what they, at least my generation, most of my life, they would kick like, we coming to these things from this rational place. And y'all basically, let homie like fully disrespect him.
Y'all, you let him fully disrespect y'all standard bearer.
Like, damn. Right? What happened to loyalty? What happened to trust? What happened to the loyalty?
Again, the power.
Amongst Steve, trust among royalty. Like, what happened?
Yeah, the power, man. And the benefit of the power became more important than, the values at some juncture. So, just I want to pivot really quick because it's something I was thinking about that just happened yesterday. and we can touch it and then kind of move on. But the march,
Mm.
the March on Washington, or Al Sharp, I call it Al Sharpton's March. But I'm sure there were other people involved, so I don't want to disrespect the other people. You know what I mean? I don't want to be harmed. I don't want to be like, it's Al Sharpton's March and it's obviously somebody else's march. But two interesting thing about that march yesterday, kind of talk about the politics and the power and deciding how to move, is like something interesting happened yesterday in that it was the March on Washington and the National Black Political Convention was held on the same day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know all the specifics, but that itself is not a good foreboding thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to get your take on it. But for me, both things are well-intentioned and the right thing to do. The question is, should they both have been done on the same day? You know, do you get the energy and the attention that you want to pay to the March on Washington, or do you get the attention that you want to pay to the National Black Political Convention if they both been done? I know one is virtual and one is physical, but it is more than just the spacing. It's the idea of the unity and flowing of, like, because both of these things are about blackness, and fundamentally, obviously, Al Sharpton's was get your knee off our necks, but both of them had everything to do with the principle of the future of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to be on the same day, kind of for me speaks to an internal challenge that the Black community is having around how we move forward with figuring out our collective Black future. So I want to get your take on it.
It's a total miss as far as I'm concerned, because it evidences, it shows an evidence that you have streams of intent, right? You have these groups with this intent for the improvement of the lives of Black people and Black and brown people, and, you know, all those who may love and care about us, or those who may benefit from whatever political concepts come out of our action. And they're not in any way thinking about, these two things should interface, right?
Right.
If millions of people come out to the march, right, or hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many were out there, but
right,
then some of those same people might be people that would want to be a part of this convention. Now I know, and I didn't get to watch it. I was going to go try to see if I could watch I'm sure there'll be a replay of it. Like, what's the joint in to convict the Black, I think it was 68 or 69 in Indiana. Or maybe it was 70, a little bit later.
It was I think
70
68 in Gary.
Gary joint.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, how much stuff that we now just like think about, like, oh, that was just Black people was at, like, a whole lot of agreements and political concepts that went into action across the country came out of that little meeting.
Right.
Right. There's a lot of people, I think it was, a couple hundred people or whatever, but people they came together, they voted on, and so if you having a convention and a meeting of the minds and a sharing of, like, what are the ideas that we need, and then there's millions of people who maybe would care about that aren't there, that means you lose the benefit of that, of them being part of it and taking those ideas back into action or applying those ideas where they're at. And then also it gets into the thing of that, like, you detach the purpose of public demonstration from the other side, which is the activation of the ideas that come with the demonstration is a manifestation of, like, making sure folks see you, and especially in terms of, human history, is like a whole lot of people come outside where normally ain't no people. People go, what's going on? Why are all them people outside?
Right.
Or why are all those people over there? Right. Like, it's very, basic, concept, but but those two things like that should be aligned. Like, it brings into question, like, the motives of change. It brings into question, are even the leadership of these activities, not only are they interfacing, because they don't need to like, we have a weekly meeting, like, not that, but at some point go, hey, we're doing this. We wanted to let y'all know that we're doing this action. You know what I'm saying? How does this impact the action you're doing? You know what I'm saying? And it is the thing, and it's not that other, political philosophies don't have, these derivations, so to speak, but it is something that I think is a consistent challenge, is you have people who are operating like really separate. You see it's a lot in local stuff. I'm experiencing it right now, you know what I'm saying, with a lot of what folks are trying to do here, in response to this community violence, and then the protesting, and then the other stuff that just has been stuff that people need. You know what I mean? We got this thing with the CARES Act. There's like this, it's pretty dope. There's money that's been set up, that's going to get directed to that folks can access towards the Black people.
Right.
Right. But it's like, it's multiple different streams, and some of them needed the interface, some of them don't. But what you have becomes a really big challenge to having a coherent, push to get something done, is you got people that are like they're coming into maybe the policy side 2 years removed from people that have been working on it. And they're like, yeah, what do we need next? And it's like, yo, man, we've been working on this for like 4 years, dog. Like, just you come to the meeting and hear what we talk about, right? And it's like, nah, man, we gotta get ready to get out the streets. You know what I'm saying? Or like, I'm ready to act now. And it's like, yo, we've been trying to act. Like, there's a reason why this takes this long, right? And then on the other side, you got folks who may be in that lane that's like, why they out there tearing shit up? Or why they out, like, oh, they all they want to do is protest. Like, they just want to go outside and make a public demonstration, but they don't want to do like, so you can have this sort of enmity, this tension. And then ultimately you start to get the question, well, what's the message? Do folks, are folks coherent on, a voting strategy? Are folks coherent on other advocacy points, either in terms of land use or, who are the different layers of political leadership and, non, economic leadership or, business outside of the civic space, who can help us get whatever the vision we want done. And so it's like, ugh, that's not good. And then, I have to say, on the National Black Convention, like, I found out like the night before that was happening. Like, and I was like, and I'm on a couple different news that I'm like, one of them should have told me. Like, I check my email every day. Like, how did this slip? Like, I'm not on anything. I didn't see it I didn't even see it on like an Instagram ad.
And there's also the organizing component of like you being a member of the community in your region and a big member of the community in your region, and your family's a big member of the community. That means who was the delegates representing you, and how were the delegates representing you chosen? Right? Like, and so there are people who were going to theoretically go speak for for Oregon. There are people who are going to speak for Pennsylvania. But like, who chose them? And, again, it goes back to this concept that I think we talk about a lot. Like, there's a lot of different perspectives of Black politics. And if you're saying the National Black Political Convention ain't got nothing to do with conservative handkerchief wearing head Black folks, right? Or the National Black Convention of folks that ain't in systems that haven't been compromised, right? Then you should say that.
Right. Don't call it the National
Black Political Convention, because that means everybody needs to be there. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's a widespread view of Black people who should be putting forth platforms that different parties, both parties, at least, and as well as the Green Party and others, should be shared with them. Right, because you're saying this is what matters for Black people across the board. Now, again, like I said, if it's just what I was talking about, then that's cool. You know what I mean? But I don't think we get to that place. And it's interesting. I read an article around 72 in Politico recently that was comparing or juxtaposing 72 to today, and like what happened in 72, and you had a lot of power. And to your point, I mean, thousands of people got to electoral office based off, not based off what happened in 72, but also, building off what happened in 72. But they talked about like being organized when they leave, and operational unity, and all the different terminologies, right? Because even like as we're talking about the Republican Party, in a real scary way, they have operational unity.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And, I
Like,
mean, that's what's allowed them to be effective.
Right. They're willing to have operational unity, right? And the Democratic Party and progressives and we've had a challenge with operational unity. And so just thinking about those kind of things as we move forward, and then I would argue that the folks who ended up on the Black Political Convention and the folks who ended up at the march, so obviously there's huge overlap, but there's also some differences, right? And how do you merge those together? Because when you're really talking about doing stuff for Black folks, you got to merge together a person who feels like marching showed their support and the people who feel like they're in the trenches on deep policy that's going to shift national objectives and national activities. You know what I mean? But you need those two people. You need the regular person, the person that's going to march and show their support, to actually see their connection to your policy change. Because if they don't see the connection to your policy change, then they're not going to support it. And I want to say one more thing about an interesting thing around this, and this is this idea of leadership. Somebody told me one time, leaders have followers, right? And it was really interesting. Now, I know, we have a value, our value system deals more with leadership as an internal mechanism of creating examples, right? But when you're talking about mass movements, it becomes a little more important for people to actually follow what people are saying. Because you need people to be moving in alignment. And if you are fortunate enough for everyone to have gone to the intellectual space to come to an agreement, right? Like to show and prove there's no mystery, as we would say, then that's fine.
Right.
But that's a different kind of thing than you need to move to agreement on getting this person here and advocating this policy here and creating, coalitions with these sets of people over here in order to see the world you want to see. And when we have a whole bunch of leaders with no followers in the political context, right? Then what you have is a whole bunch of people who are speaking for the people, but have not organized the people and galvanized people, kind of going back to the Rasper Rocket joint, that have not organized the people and truly represent the people. So then what you call leadership is a whole bunch of voices in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yep.
That we can't coalesce around.
Yeah, it's been it's been a concept this year. You know what I mean? Really, I've been thinking about a lot. You know what I mean? And dealing with a lot. Is that like, who are you actually responsible? Like when people say, like, "Oh, that person's not accountable to the community," or this person, and it's like, well, who are they engaged with? And maybe you're not a part of that group. Right, because it's a good chance for some people. Some people are just, they have values, they have some whatever their concepts, and they're advocating for those, right? But they may not have a feedback loop of people who are impacted, that they're like, oh no, man, I don't know, or even a crew, right, to run with, that y'all are making civic actions, right? And it is something that has surfaced in like, oh, that's why that can't get done. Right, so you're sitting there with people and they're like, oh, well, we need this and that. And I'm like, well, you can't, that's not going to get, I mean, these are great ideas. This is a great idea. I'm saying it's a bad idea. It's a great idea. Who besides you, and then who besides you wants this? And then who besides you is going to go to the mattresses, so to speak, if it don't happen?
Right.
And then as a person that's an advocate, you got to think about like, oh, well, yeah, you know what? You know what I mean? It is something, and it just goes back to when I was I think it was either the Chicago policy link and the sister from LA, it came in one of the sessions, and it was about like community organizing something. She was like, look, the conservative movement has embraced all the stuff we used to do. Having different types of meetups and these different functions where you're making sure your messaging and your ideas are having some relationship with people, right? Even if it ain't the same amount of people or people with different circumstances, like a lot of us don't do that. We assume a lot that people have the same ideas and want the same things, and don't actually have like, I remember listening to in the Barack Obama Making of Obama joint.
Yeah.
And when they talk about Jesse, and that the Operation Push had weekly Saturday meetings for like 5 hours.
Right.
Like whether you agree with anything with Jesse or anything else, I'm pretty sure Jesse has some feedback.
Right.
Right. Like if you got a meeting every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 of whoever your political, activation, civic activation, blah, 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 unit is, y'all gonna make something happen. Because the idea is, especially if people are coming, right, and they're coming and they're engaging and you're making space for these everything. Like I think there's a place somewhere, and it may, and like I said, I take one for the team. It might have been us, man. We used to do a lot of stuff. We used to go a lot of stuff back when we was in our teens and 20s. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of politics, in a very discreet way, that got sort of pulled from this place where it was like, yo, I organize, these 5 blocks up in, in Homewood, or
right.
I'm over here, in the Villa, in a Portland context, and I go up here and I go out and I knock on all the doors. We go knock on all the doors in the Villa and make sure folks see these flyers, make sure people get this, right? Like that type of just even grassroots, because people are saying grassroots. People, they be like grassroots, from the grassroots. And I'd be like, yeah, them some roots. You know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up in Willingboro. Like, I don't know the last time, and I know people got no solicitation times and all that. I don't know the last time I seen somebody before I, went off to be a man on my own, and in the times I go home to visit, really like canvassing the neighborhood around something.
Right.
Right. And there's something important about that. Like to go, yo, I'm going door to door to make sure my community is up on this matter or this issue, or turns out it's like, oh, well, they're probably going to vote that way anyway. So go make them turn out in force.
And hear them. Hold up. But I want to say this. And hear them, because they may not totally agree with you. Be okay with hearing what they have to say and then engaging to talk about, well, what is somewhere in between how they see the world and how you see the world. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, have that out with them. Because if not, you're going to push your ideas being better for the people. And if they don't get it, they just don't know. Where you need to hear them out. Now, if you can explain and put your ideas in real terms, and then allow them to hear your values and you to hear theirs, then we get what we get. But you got to go hear them, not just tell them. Because sometimes what we're calling grassroots politics is me telling you about what I think. Mm-hmm. Not, again, to use the Baraka term, struggling with each other. Now, to your point about Jesse in Chicago and a lot of other cities, people had places where Black folks would struggle through ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, you might go to church and the pastor might say something and they may be struggling through a concept. You know what I mean? Like, you might have a street corner situation where Muggs is struggling through a radio show, right? Back when Black radio meant something different than it means today. Right? Mm-hmm. From the Delaware Valley, from the Philadelphia area, Mary Mason and Georgie Woods, man, they held so much weight as Black radio folks. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. They literally, if you cared about politics in Philadelphia, Black, white, Latino, anything, you had to listen to Mary Mason because you never knew who she might have on to talk about an idea.
Yep.
But we had to struggle through it. And somebody might call in and say, I disagree with you. But you struggled through ideas in public. You didn't agree on an idea. You didn't come to an idea based on its intellectual capacity and then try to tell other people that it was the right idea. And call it grassroots with 14 other people that you agree with. And not willing to have the conversation with people who may think differently than you, but want the same objective. And you got to be able to have that conversation. You know what I mean? Because that's where you get the masses of people being behind something. That's where you get the Harold Washingtons. Right? You get the Harold Washingtons because, we may have talked about this. Harold Washington was not a grassroots guy. Harold Washington's father was part of the Daily Machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Harold Washington was a grassroots guy in the sense of being from Chicago. Right? Like, and sometimes we make that distinction.
Yeah. And I think it's important when he would go get with people.
Right.
And talk to them. And like, yo, let's chop it. Like, let me, that's how you see it. Well, I see it like this, but like we are engaged with each other. I'm not a dude in a shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, you over there, I came down your way to hear what y'all was talking about. You don't like my plan. That's cool. I heard you out. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I changed. Maybe I pivoted a little bit based on the feedback I got. You know what I mean? But I'm also not afraid to come talk to you. And I think that is I think that's something that we just, I don't know, however it happened, folks have got away from. And again, it's not just, so to speak, our side of current politics, so to speak, but it is very important and it's critical for us to think about, like, yo, when's the last time you had a rousing political conversation and it wasn't either, somebody, in that you would consider in your community, in a space, and just like, what should we do? And y'all really went back and forth about it. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe at some point decided, we don't need it. We good. I hear some of what you saying, blah, blah, blah. And then you moved on, and then you went on. Maybe you acted on it, maybe you didn't, but like just had the space, and even been called to have the space. Because I've seen people call people to come together, but I have not. It has had a lean to it, and
right.
Some people would have looked at that and said, "I'm not going to that. I'm gonna be in there arguing with two people."
Right.
Cool. You know what I'm saying? Now we got to get away from that. We got to get to the place where we go, hey man, let's wrestle with what we're gonna do about 7th Street in the intersection of 7th and MLK or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure there's a 7th and MLK somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It definitely is in the Midwest. It's definitely a 7th and MLK somewhere.
So, maybe we got a couple minutes to close out, man. Sad news: the brother Chadwick Boseman returned yesterday. As a result of fight with colon cancer, and it's well, I mean, it's kind of ill. I mean, like, anytime somebody young, and especially for those that don't know, our age, 40 something ain't old,
right?
You know what I'm saying? To pass, and then you look at all the work, to know all the work he's been did the last few years of his life, that he was also battling cancer. Is like, I mean, it's a tough out, man. Like, whatever it's worth, whatever folks think about, celebrities, but he's an artist, you know what I'm saying, and was bringing certain stories to life, you know what I'm saying, and that's a really important thing, for people, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's just, it's a sad piece. What's your thought?
Yeah, man. Wow, a couple thoughts about it. So one, I think this is another kind of takeoff of something I shared about the role of HBCUs, because I think it's important to acknowledge that he studied drama and worked on his craft at a historically Black college university at Howard, and developed his craft in that way, and developed his craft through the Black circuit of acting and working before he became the person we see today. Right. And when I say before he became, I mean just in a sense on a broader scale. Right. Because I think he was the person that he was. We just know now. Right.
Right.
But I think that's important to talk about. How do we nurture those spaces to continue to foster those actors who, one, are very good at their craft, and two, are thoughtful around their origin story when it comes to art and the role of Black art. Right. So I think that's just one thing that we can't forget in this conversation, because we can show him talking to folks from Howard, but not remember that he was that same person. I saw a post on IG from someone that did some art with him, someone that you and I both know, that had left from Pittsburgh. They were in Pittsburgh. They left Pittsburgh and then went back to D.C., their native town, and then worked with Chadwick Boseman on some work he was doing at Howard at that time. And so it gave it another context to me that this was a brother in 99, 2000, working on his art in D.C. You know what I mean? So just to think about that, not just this idea of the struggling actor, waiting tables, but like coming of age through our universities. So which is one. Two, clearly the health component. Yeah. And it shakes you just to think about that, often we frame our health disparity conversation around folks who have less access to resources or find themselves disengaged from systems and such. But this was not that person, right? This just was a person that, and I don't know the origin if someone in his family had it, you know what I mean? So not, for me trying to check all that, but just in general, that idea of just our health, right? And thinking about that context of ad and, so that's another thing. And then the third thing for me was this idea of not just our superheroes, but our modern day quote unquote heroes, right? Because I think obviously for very good reasons, everyone is focusing on his role in Black Panther, right? But I think, we have very real other heroes that he played, right?
Right.
James Brown's an American hero with all his challenges and, the 1989 video. With all the, what I mean? Yeah, I might go watch that again. With that and with Jackie Robinson and with some of the challenges some people have around his politics, whatever these were people who did amazing things as Black men in real time. And he was able to play them and bring them to life, as well as this fictional character, which has had a role in kind of an empowering and setting this kind of idea, right? So I just think the ability to inhabit all those roles was important. And the last thing I'll say is, as the parlance that we know, like keep rumbling, because this man fought through cancer for 4 years in the public eye.
Yeah.
Right? Like keep rumbling. Be strong. It doesn't mean not to be vulnerable. Doesn't mean he didn't have his days, clearly. But it meant that through it all, he stood as tall as he could until he could not.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, young people and old people should take from it, like stand tall as long as you can. Yeah. Because you never know who you're inspiring as you stand tall. So what's your take?
I mean, I think you hit a lot of the strong points. I would say to add, like, I remember watched a couple interviews with him like in the last year, and I'm trying to remember which one, but one it was like I got the sense that as an artist, and this I guess I would say I've listened to over the last couple of years several different podcasts with Black actors who've gotten to that national, where you really been in some big films and we all know their names. And the commitment it takes to be successful, in the creative arts, but also that it isn't just it is like it's meaningful to the performer to be there to tell stories that reflect their community, and I don't think that I think sometimes that folks can downplay the value of like. People telling our stories is probably the oldest, software, so to speak. What I mean? Whether that was around the, around the fire pit, the conceptual fire pit, around, on the trade caravan, even in the hardest times, of our recent ancestors, crossing that sea, fighting through a despicable circumstance, in plantations and fields and bogs, like people being willing, able, and invested in telling our stories and fighting for the to tell them well, and to make sure we hear these different parts of our life and see ourselves, you know what I'm saying, through the lens of our own mythos and our own exploratory ideas, and even sometimes and just telling to make sure you remember what giving you a present reminder of something that was a real thing or was a real person. I think it shouldn't be missed. It should be appreciated, and I think I'm just thankful for what the brother contributed, you know what I'm saying, to the culture in that sense, and love and respect to his family, like and those that knew him, because it's sad, but from what I can see, it seemed like a life well lived. So you take what you can, take the best part.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we right on it. Anything for the good of the order before we?
Hey, man. Two things. Number one, watch or read something different from your perspective and get ready for November. And two, look out for the health and wellness of folks in your community.
Word up. Thing I had is just, I know for some school is in action and some school is soon to start. But I did just an aside, we did a summer thing to close out the summer to do just some enrichment kind of classes for kids in the community here, through our organizing in the Black Parent Union. And I did did a little Black History class 101 joint with some kids. And it was fun. And I think the kids had fun. I got a little feedback. Seemed like the kids enjoyed. I told them, I'm not going to teach you everything you need to know about Black history in an hour, but I want to give you some tools, tell you a little bit of content. So we talked a little bit of history, but it was so much fun seeing the kids having fun, getting something about themselves from somebody from their community. And I think, we could all, benefit. I mean, go tell some kids something positive, man. like if you got some time this weekend, man, go pop up on some youngins and tell them something fun, man. And smile with them and hear their stories. Like the babies need us, and the babies love that. You know what I'm saying? So let's go give them some love. That's what I'm gonna close on.
Oh man.
All right. With that, I'm say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my brother, I'm Majestic. Thank you to you, the listener. As always, you can find Good Brothers and the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast anywhere podcasts can be found for free. You can support Good Brothers by finding us on Instagram, following the page, by sharing the podcast, by heading to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review, rate, put some stars on it. You know what I'm saying? And, we're just going to keep making these and producing this regularly for you. If you enjoy the show, please give us some feedback via any of the channels listed in the show notes. That means anything from leaving a message to sending us a message direct or a comment, on Instagram, or you can find me on Twitter at Justice Rajee, what have you. Do what works. Yeah, that's all I got today. So, be safe, man. Let's go into September and the closing months of this year, with vim and vigor. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but we're going to ride it out. So with that, I say peace.